Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. And if you're a true General Hospital fan, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's get started with today's video. According to General Hospital, GH, teasers, Ethan Lovett, Nathan Dean, will bring some unexpected news to Lulu Spencer, Alexa Havens-Bruning. When a new character named Hudson, Troy Lennon-Appel, arrives in Port Charles, Ethan will reconsider his decision to stay there. The trouble will begin on July 30th, when Ethan will get a shock. Since it is also the day Hudson will make his debut appearance, it stands to reason that he'll be the one to surprise Ethan soon. Of course, we know Hudson is a corporate executive who will be pursuing someone specific when he first appears in PC. Hudson will be motivated to find someone and make some demands for whatever it is he is pursuing. According to summer preview leaks, Ethan's past is set to catch up with him and force him to flee. Thus, Hudson is poised to drive him out of Port Charles. This could be related to Ethan's failed work with Delilah Wilson, Lily Cardone, prior to his PC comeback. Ethan will allegedly be alarmed by Hudson's visit, which could be due to Hudson's employment. There's a fair probability Hudson is linked to a General Hospital villain who will eventually take center stage. Although Hudson could be Phoebe's, Luna and Lucia Creighton, biological father, it seems more likely that her father is Hudson's boss. Fans of GH will recall Ethan going through a cold case box at the PCPD to obtain the sample needed for Phoebe's paternity test. That suggests Phoebe's father could be a familiar character from the past, but we'll have to wait and see how it all unfolds when more jigsaw pieces are revealed. Hudson may have been assigned to find Ethan, but Ethan may realize that the truth about Phoebe and her biological father will be revealed if he lingers around. Ethan doesn't want to put Phoebe or his own family in risk. That is probably why Ethan will make a big news to Lulu on July 31st. Ethan appears to be preparing to declare that he is leaving town unexpectedly, so Lulu will have questions and may not receive many answers. General Hospital spoilers indicate that Ethan will be ready to flee, so Ava Jerome, Maura West, will undoubtedly get a shock when she finds he is leaving or has already left. The late afternoon sun hung low over Port Charles, casting long shadows on the docks as the water lapped gently against the pilings. Lulu Spencer stood on the edge of Pier 55, her arms securely crossed against her chest, watching the horizon. The familiar scent of salt and diesel clung in the air, evoking memories of her father. Luke had adored this place. He had taught her to skip stones here, told her fantastic stories about his experiences, and always made the world seem larger and more fascinating than it was. The docks now felt calmer and empty. She had come here searching for a moment of calm after another long day of juggling job, family, and the never-ending turmoil that never seemed to leave her life alone. She had not expected to find her brother waiting for her. Ethan Lovett leaned against a weathered wooden post, hands deep in the pockets of his jacket, staring out at the ocean like she was. When he turned to face her, the comfortable smile he usually wore was gone. His face appeared worn and older, as if the weeks he spent back in Port Charles had taken more from him than he was willing to accept. "Lulu," he said, his voice softer than normal. "I was hoping I'd catch you here." She observed him for a moment, noting the stiffness in his shoulders and the way his gaze kept drifting back toward the ocean, as if he was already halfway gone. "You've been avoiding me," she explained. It was not an allegation, but a fact. Since the upheaval with Ava and the questions surrounding baby Phoebe, Ethan has become more difficult to locate. He still showed up when she needed him, with that familiar half-smile that reminded her of Luke, but something had changed. Ethan took a long breath and pushed off the post. "I was not avoiding you. I was figuring things out." He hesitated, then met her gaze. "I need to speak to you. Properly. No distractions, no interruptions." Lulu felt a tinge of anxiety. She'd known Ethan long enough to realize when he was about to give bad news. "Okay," she replied cautiously. "Talk." He looked around the nearly deserted pier before nodding toward a couple of crates placed near the railing. They sat side by side, just as they did the day he returned to town, and chatted about their father. The memories sat between them, weighty and silent. "I've been dealing with some old problems," Ethan explained. "Things that have followed me from Australia. Even before that. I figured I could handle them here. Keep them contained. But I was wrong." He scratched the back of his neck, a nervous habit she'd noticed 100 times. They're looking for me, Lulu. Dangerous people. And the longer I stay in Port Charles, the more risk I pose to those around me. This includes you. Lulu's gut constricted. What type of people? The kind that don't care who gets caught in the crossfire. Ethan's voice was steady, but she could sense the weight behind it. I've spent years running from this. I thought I had it under control, but it always found a way back. Coming here was meant to be brief. I wanted to see you. I wanted to make sure you were fine after everything with Dad. But I can't keep pretending that my presence here isn't a target for the people I care about. She turned to face him directly. Well, what are you saying? Ethan stared at her for a long time, as if memorizing her features. I am leaving.
For good this time.
Or, at least until I can get this resolved permanently. I'm not sure how long that will take. The words hit her harder than she expected. Lulu had always known that Ethan was restless. He came and went like the tide, appearing when the family needed him and disappearing when the danger became too real. However, the finality in his tone set this apart. This did not feel like his normal exit. It felt like a door closing. You're serious, she said.
Yeah.
He gave a single nod. I have already made the arrangements. I depart tonight. Lulu glanced at him, trying to grasp the abrupt change. Just a few weeks earlier, they were sitting on these same docks, laughing about old stories and sharing memories of Luke, hoping that the fragmented pieces of their family would eventually come together. He was now packing everything away again. Why didn't you tell me earlier? She asked. Her voice sounded rougher than she intended. You have been back for months. We have been through a lot. And now you're declaring your departure. Ethan flinched slightly at the sharpness of her tone. Because I was hoping to fix it without having to leave. I believed that if I remained silent and handled things correctly, the threat would pass. It did not. It's getting close. And after everything with Phoebe, he paused, his jaw stiffening. Lulu's eyes narrowed. How about Phoebe? He shook his head. That is something I cannot describe right now. Not entirely. Just remember that certain secrets are better kept buried. For everyone's sake. The evasion hurt. Lulu had spent enough of her life dealing with half-truths and well-guarded family secrets to know when someone was shutting her out. You're my brother, she explained. You can't drop something like this and then refuse to explain. I have already lost Dad. I almost lost everything while I was in that coma. I finally got you back in my life, and now you're walking away without explaining why. Ethan stood up and took a few steps along the railing, his boots scuffing against the aged wood. I care about you. About this family. Staying here will place you in the middle of something you did not ask for. I've spent my entire life trying not to be the type of person that brings others down with him. This is my attempt to do the right thing. By disappearing again? Lulu rose to her feet as well. That isn't the correct thing. That is running. You've always been good at it. The words hung in the air between them. Ethan paused his pacing and looked at her, and she caught a glimpse of real emotion on his face. Guilt, perhaps, or remorse. Then it was gone, replaced by the cautious mask he donned whenever the topic became too personal. You're right, he replied gently. I'm good at running. I've had plenty of practice. But this time, I'm not being selfish. It's about ensuring that the people I care about do not bear the brunt of my blunders. Lulu's throat tightened. She wanted to protest, demand more information, and grip his arm, refusing to let go. Instead, she remembered how Luke had disappeared for months or years at a time, always with some great explanation about danger or unfinished business. She despised it back then. She loathed it now. Where are you going? She asked. Somewhere far enough away that people looking for me won't think to look in Port Charles first, Ethan said with a dry smile. I have several possibilities. None of them include staying here and waiting for disaster to arrive at your door. She crossed her arms again, more to keep herself together than anything else. So, what am I meant to tell everyone? Mom? Lucky? What about the kids? That you decided to pack up and leave without saying goodbye. I'll speak with the people who need to know, he stated. But I wanted you to hear from me first. You've always been the person who understood. Even when I didn't deserve it. Lulu shook her head. Understanding doesn't make it less painful. They stood in quiet for long, the water running steadily beneath them. Seagulls shouted overhead. A deep and melancholy freighter horn could be heard out in the distance. The regular sounds of the harbor persisted as if nothing major had occurred, as if one more Spencer was not about to vanish from Port Charles, as so many others had before. Ethan ultimately reached into his jacket and retrieved a small folded piece of paper. He held it out for her. "It's a number. It's not mine. I won't be approachable that way, but if something happens and you need to send me a message, this person can locate me. Use it only if necessary." Lulu grabbed the paper without looking at it and placed it in her pocket. "I do not want a number, Ethan. I want my brother." He took a step closer and hugged her. She stiffened for a second before letting herself lean into it. He smelled like the same fragrance he'd always worn, mingled with a faint sea scent. For a brief time, they felt like children again, standing on this pier after one of Luke's fantastic stories, trusting that the world would always remain unchanged. "I'm still your brother," he said softly against her hair. "That does not alter, no matter where I am." As he drew back, his eyes were brighter than usual. Lulu hurriedly wiped her face, refusing to allow tears to form. "You better come back," she said. "I am serious. When this is over, whatever it is, you return home." Ethan nodded, but his expression told her he was not making any promises he couldn't make. "I'll do everything I can." They went along the pier as the sun set, turning the ocean gold and orange. Ethan talked a little more about practical matters, how he had already spoken with a few individuals, how he had left certain preparations in place, and how he hoped she wouldn't be too concerned. Lulu listened, but most of it washed over her. All she could think about was the growing knowledge that by tomorrow morning, her brother would be gone again, and the hole he left behind would feel far wider than it should. They came to a stop at the pier's end. Ethan glanced at his watch. "I should leave. There are a few things I need to finish before I depart." Lulu nodded, not trusting her voice. He hugged her again, this time for longer, and then walked away, his form shrinking against the backdrop of the warehouses and the fading light. She stared until he turned the corner and vanished from view. For a long time, she stood still, staring at the empty place where he had been. The paper in her pocket seemed heavier than it should. She took it out and unfolded it, examining the number written in Ethan's familiar handwriting. It was only digits. No name. There's no explanation. Another secret to keep. She considered phoning someone, Dante, perhaps, or her mother, but the words would not come. "How did you explain that your brother looked you in the eyes and informed you he was leaving because the danger he faced was too big to share? How did you explain to people that some goodbyes were not dramatic explosions, but rather calm decisions made on a dock at sunset?" The breeze picked up, carrying the scent of the ocean and the distant sounds of the city. Lulu sat back down on the crate, her elbows resting on her knees, peering out at the horizon like Ethan had when she first found him. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of Port Charles and all its tangled histories, her brother was ready to vanish into whatever shadows remained. And she was left behind once more, clutching the fragments of a family that never seemed to stay together for long. She stayed till the light faded and the first stars showed above the lake. Only then did she straighten up, tuck the folded note further into her pocket, and start walking back toward the life that awaited her, minus one more person she loved. In the days that followed, word of Ethan's departure filtered across Port Charles in the same way that all big news does, in pieces, in sideways glances, and in quiet conversations that came to a halt when specific people entered the room. Lulu found herself repeating a carefully edited version of the truth to everyone who asked. He had business to conduct. He'd be gone for a while. No, she wasn't sure when he'd return. Even she felt the solutions were thin. At home, the absence crept into the corners of everyday events. She caught herself reaching for her phone to send him something hilarious she'd seen, only to realize he wouldn't respond. She found herself gazing toward the door at family gatherings, half expecting him to walk in with that old crooked smile and some absurd story about where he had been. The expectation decreased little each day, but it never completely vanished. Lulu pulled out the piece of paper again one evening, sitting alone at the kitchen table with a cup of tea that had become cold. She gazed at the number for a long time, replaying every conversation they'd had in the weeks leading up to his departure. She reflected on the secrets he had refused to reveal, the care with which he chose his words, and the conviction in his eyes when he stated that he was doing this to protect the people he loved. She wanted to believe him. She wished to think that this time the threat was real enough to justify another disappearance. But a part of her, the one that had grown up watching Luke vanish and reappear, wondered if running had simply become Ethan's only language when the world became too difficult. She gently folded the paper and stored it in a drawer, unsure whether to discard it or utilize it. Outside the window, the lights of Port Charles shone against the night sky. Life went on somewhere among the streets, buildings, and familiar faces. People disagreed and reconciled, made and broke promises, and fell in and out of love. The city did not pause as another Spencer left town. It never has. Lulu finished her tea, rinsed the cup, and turned off the kitchen lights. In the silence of the house, she allowed herself one last moment of honesty. She already missed him. She was unhappy with him for leaving. She understood why he thought he needed to leave. All of those emotions existed simultaneously, intertwined together as so many things in her life had always been. She'd wake up tomorrow and face whatever happened next. She would manage the questions, the worried looks, and the vacant seat at the table. She would continue to move forward as she always had. But now, in the quietness, she allowed herself to be shocked by it, the suddenness of the announcement, the finality of the goodbye, the silent way her brother had decided to walk out of her life again. The late afternoon light streamed through the Metro Court Suite's half-drawn blinds, painting broad amber lines across the carpet where Lulu Spencer stood, arms folded tightly against her chest. She had come here expecting answers, or at the very least the typical half-truths Ethan specialized in when the past began to loom over him. Instead, she discovered him packing. Not the precise folding of a man packing for a short journey, but the frantic stuffing of garments and a single-used leather bag that had seen far too many exits. Ethan didn't glance up at first. His hands moved with the practiced efficiency of someone who had long realized that delay raised inquiries he couldn't afford. When he finally looked into her eyes, the familiar crooked half-smile was gone. In its place sat something flatter and more definitive. "I'm leaving," he announced. The words came without a preamble, without the gentle lead-in she had gotten accustomed to over the previous weeks of hesitant reconnection. "Tonight." Lulu's initial reaction was a brief, unbelieving laugh that faded almost instantly. "Leaving? As in for a few days? Or are we talking about the kind of leaving where you vanish and I spend the next 6 months wondering if you've died in a ditch somewhere?" He zipped the bag shut with more force than needed. "The second kind. Port Charles is no longer safe for me, or anyone standing very close."